What would you do if the child you love most, the one remaining connection to your broken family, started to grow up, develop independent thoughts, and no longer obeyed your every word? Would you hold them tighter, or would you slowly crush everything with a love poisoned by control? And what if a father who constantly claimed that his daughter was the light of his life turned out to be the last person seen with her before her lifeless body was found deep in a cold forest? Would you still believe he was innocent? Lake George, New York. A summer vacation. A father. A missing child. And a truth waiting to be uncovered. This story didn't happen in some far-off place, but in a peaceful town in upstate New York, where a small family embarked on what was supposed to be a simple holiday, one that would end in tragedy. Luciano Frattolin, a 45-year-old businessman from Montreal, Canada, owned a small chain of coffee shops. He ran a stable business, dressed neatly, and spoke politely. On social media, he often shared photos of his daughter, young Melina, along with captions dripping in sentiment. The light of my life, my only hope for the future. To those around him, Luciano seemed like a devoted, composed, and successful father. But beneath that polished image was a man described as rigid, excessively perfectionist, and obsessed with control. In a personal profile, Luciano described himself as someone who disliked chaos, was irritated by disorder, and hated when things didn't go according to plan. From his employees at the coffee shop to his own daughter, everything around him was managed like a system. There was no room for spontaneity, no room for unstructured emotion. Melina Frattolin was Luciano's only child, the result of his previous marriage to a French-Canadian woman. After their divorce in 2019, Melina lived with her mother in Montreal, Canada. Luciano was granted visitation rights as determined by the court, usually on weekends or special holidays. Although they didn't live together, Luciano stayed in frequent contact. He made video calls, sent handwritten letters and gifts, and most notably, often posted old photos of himself and Melina on social media, images that once looked loving but would later become haunting. Melina was a sweet, affectionate little girl who loved to draw and, like most children her age, was a bit messy. She would scatter her toys across the living room, forget her drawings everywhere, and insist on doing things her own way. A family friend once said, Melina was the kind of child that softened any adult. She spoke like a little grown-up, but her heart was pure. But that wasn't easy for Luciano. He wanted everything in order. Even during the rare weekends he spent with her, he insisted Melina clean up her toys before starting another activity. Want to draw? Clean the table first. Want to watch a movie? Finish your food without dropping crumbs. There was no shouting, no hitting, just silent, repeated control, enough to weigh heavily on a young child. Still, Melina loved her father. In a birthday card she made by hand, she wrote, "I like it when Daddy isn't working and just plays with me." Her mother kept that card as a keepsake, later saying she just needed a father who could relax a little. The relationship between Luciano and Melina's mother was strained but quiet. Luciano had asked for extended visits, even suggested that Melina live with him for several months or attend school near his home. Her mother declined, citing stability and continuity. Each rejection pushed Luciano further inward. He didn't argue, he didn't lash out. Instead, he retreated and began projecting an image of being a loving father online, perhaps as a way to assert that he still mattered, regardless of what others believed. In July 2025, Luciano was granted a 10-day summer vacation with Melina, as allowed by court agreement. He chose quiet tourist destinations, New York City, Connecticut, and finally, Lake George, a serene area with forests, lakes, campgrounds, and scenic trails. In the early days of their trip, Luciano continued playing the part of the attentive father. He posted photos of Melina eating ice cream, sitting in the car, drawing inside a cabin. Everything appeared peaceful. Melina even called her mother one afternoon and said, "I'm having fun with Daddy." No one knew that just a few hours after that call, Melina would disappear. What was meant to be a joyful summer vacation between father and daughter would become the final journey of a 9-year-old girl's life. And the last person seen with her would also be the one to report that she had been kidnapped, through a story so strange that it would mobilize law enforcement across an entire state. From a family divided by divorce, from a father who once took pride in controlling his life, and from a child too young to understand custody battles, this is how the tragedy began. A holiday that should have ended in laughter became a one-way path for a little girl who never returned, and what followed would become one of the most unsettling child homicide cases of 2025. That afternoon, around 6:30 p.m., Melina made a phone call to her mother from the town of Saratoga Springs, not far from Lake George. She said she was out having fun with her dad. There was nothing unusual in her voice. Her mother smiled gently over the phone, reminding her to stay warm as the evening air turned cool. It would be the last time she heard her daughter's voice. After that call, according to cell phone data and GPS tracking, Luciano and Melina continued north along a rural road leading toward the Ticonderoga area. As the sunlight faded behind the trees, the father and daughter drove into a remote stretch. No streetlights, no rest stops, only forest and the dark surface of a still lake. At around 9:45 p.m., the 911 emergency line received a call from Luciano Frattolin. He claimed that his daughter had gone missing. According to his account, he had pulled over to relieve himself, leaving Melina in the car. When he returned just a few minutes later, the car door was open and Melina was gone. He said he had spotted a suspicious white van parked nearby with two unfamiliar men, but couldn't recall any further details because it was dark. He believed his daughter had been kidnapped. His report immediately activated all regional emergency protocols. Within 2 hours, the New York State Police were fully involved. By early morning, an Amber Alert, an emergency alert for child abduction, was issued statewide. Every gas station, highway signboard, electronic bulletin, and mobile phone across the region broadcast the missing child alert. Authorities asked the public to watch for a 9-year-old Canadian girl named Melina, approximately 4'3", brown hair, wearing a pink shirt. They also asked for tips about a suspicious white van. As public concern spread, search teams began scouring the area Luciano had described, the place where he claimed to have lost sight of his daughter. But early observations at the scene raised suspicions. No eyewitnesses had seen a white van in that area. There were no surveillance cameras along the route. No devices captured Melina leaving the vehicle or being taken. Most critically, Luciano's car showed no signs of forced entry. No broken windows, no scuffed doors, no struggle. The vehicle's interior was undisturbed. Around midday on July 20th, just hours after the initial report, a search team discovered a small body beneath a pile of branches and fallen leaves in a wooded area near Eagle Lake. The site was less than 250 meters from the location where Luciano said he had pulled over to relieve himself. The body was quickly identified as Melina Frattolin. She was lying on her side, eyes closed, body already cold. Her clothes were intact. There were no obvious signs of a struggle, no stab wounds, no bruising. This led investigators to initially suspect death by asphyxiation or another non-visible cause of trauma. But more troubling was the fact that there were no signs of anyone else at the scene, no additional footprints beyond Luciano's, no other access trails, no tire marks from another vehicle. Only one person had been there.
Police began reconstructing the timeline. After her last phone call at 6:30 p.m., GPS data from both Melina and Luciano's phones placed them near Eagle Lake, where Melina's body would later be found. By approximately 7:15 p.m., Melina's phone went offline. From that point onward, only Luciano's device remained active in the area. Between 7 p.m. and nearly 10 p.m., there were no other mobile signals recorded in the vicinity, no signs of any other visitors, no white van, no unfamiliar men, only Luciano. Later that evening, on July 20th, police questioned Luciano again. He stuck to his story. Melina had been kidnapped. He said he was away from the car for 5 to 7 minutes, and when he returned, she was gone. When asked why he didn't chase the van, he replied, "I froze in shock." Police didn't believe him. There was no evidence of a kidnapping. No break-in, no witnesses, no suspicious vehicle, no foreign DNA or fingerprints. Meanwhile, the location where the body had been found suggested an attempt to hide it. The branches had been placed deliberately. The site was carefully chosen, not far from the car. Easy to carry, easy to cover. A single trail of footprints led to the location and back, matching the shoes Luciano wore that day. In the early hours of July 21st, police formally arrested Luciano Frattolin. He was charged with second-degree murder and concealment of a human corpse. At his initial court appearance, he claimed he couldn't afford an attorney. This statement shocked the public, since he had been previously known as a successful small business owner in Montreal. During the hearing, Luciano appeared eerily composed. No tears, no questions about his daughter, no visible signs of panic. Observers described his demeanor as empty, emotionless, and disturbingly calm. Police then searched his car thoroughly. No blood, no foreign objects, but also no sign that anyone else had ever accessed the vehicle. The doors were locked, no forced entry. The seats and floor and console were undisturbed. It was a closed space, one that contained only Luciano and Melina. And once everything was laid bare, the truth was impossible to deny. The entire story about the white van and the kidnapping was fiction, a script Luciano had written to buy time and shift attention away from himself. The only question now was, why? Why would a father who once called his daughter the light of his life take her life during what should have been a joyful vacation? Perhaps this trip wasn't simply a summer getaway. Perhaps it was a plan quietly formed long before, and maybe in Luciano's mind, if he couldn't have his daughter through legal means, he would keep her in another, a far darker way. The real motive behind the crime remains the focus of the ongoing investigation. But at this moment, one thing is clear. Melina died in the presence of the one person she trusted most, her own father. No one in Luciano's family could believe he was the one arrested. They were in shock. Friends from Montreal were stunned. People who had once seen photos of the father and daughter hugging on social media could only remain silent. A man once praised as a model father was now brought before the court in an orange prison jumpsuit, hands cuffed, no longer maintaining his usual composed appearance. So what led to this crime? Criminal psychologists from the New York State Police began analyzing Luciano Frattolin's behavior and motives. They quickly concluded that this was not a spontaneous act of violence. There was no argument, no physical struggle, no sudden outburst. Luciano didn't act out of impulse. He acted like a man who had gradually lost control of his life and tried to reclaim it in the most twisted way possible. Those who knew Luciano described him as private, rarely showing genuine emotion. After his divorce, he threw himself into work and maintaining the image of the ideal father, but the truth was he had never accepted losing full custody of his daughter. As Melina grew up, developed her own opinions, preferences, and no longer obeyed without question, Luciano felt alienated. He may have even felt challenged in his role as a father. For someone with controlling tendencies like him, that sense of helplessness became dangerous. Experts refer to this as post-divorce control disorder, a phenomenon where one parent cannot cope with the loss of authority, especially when their relationship with the child is limited by legal rulings. In many cases, unprocessed emotions can evolve into resentment or even acts of revenge. Another significant factor: Luciano had repeatedly asked to have Melina live with him, but she refused. These requests were not just emotional, they were attempts to regain control. When those proposals were denied, he didn't react explosively, but quietly nurtured bitterness. This kind of prolonged, internalized pain is often the most destructive. The case also raised concerns about international visitation enforcement. Although Canada and the U.S. share agreements on child custody and protection, in practice, when a father legally travels with his daughter, no one monitors them. No one could have imagined that a man who professed so much love for his child would be the one to take her life. As of now, the investigation continues. The full autopsy report has yet to be released, but the evidence is strong enough for the prosecution to charge Luciano with second-degree murder. The court has denied bail. Melina's mother has not made any public statements, but according to a source, she is receiving counseling from a special support team for parents who lose a child to family-related crimes. She still cannot accept the reality that the daughter who once called to say, "I'm having fun," never came home. And even worse, the person responsible was the one Melina trusted most. In Montreal, the community held a small memorial at a park near Melina's former school. People lit candles, left flowers, and hung a photo of Melina next to a sign that read, "You should have come home safe." The grief remains. The case isn't over, but one truth is already clear. This is a wake-up call for many broken families. That not all parents are automatically safe for their children. That control is not the same as love, and that unprocessed emotions, when left to fester, can turn a father into a killer. Parental love is precious, but it must be accompanied by respect, empathy, and self-control. When love becomes possessive, it is no longer protective. It becomes dangerous. If this story has made you pause and reflect, please share it so that others may be warned. Subscribe to SC Investigation to follow more true crime cases, where sometimes the darkest threats don't come from strangers, but from within the family itself. Thank you for watching until the end.